The Winchester rifle felt heavy in Tyler Dawson's calloused hands as he stood in the Montana dust, watching the stagecoach roll up the path toward the Riverside Ranch, knowing that everything was about to change because inside that coach sat Eleanor Ortiz, and he had loved her since the moment he first saw her painting 3 years ago in the ranch house parlor. It was August 1882, and the summer heat baked the grasslands surrounding Wallace, Montana, into shades of gold and amber. Tyler had been working at Riverside Ranch for 5 years now, starting when he was just 18 years old. He had learned everything about cattle, horses, and the hard work it took to keep a ranch running from Eleanor's older brother, Marcus Ortiz, who owned the spread. Marcus had inherited it from their father, and he ran it with an iron fist and a fair mind. Tyler respected him more than any man he had ever known. But respect was not enough when it came to what Tyler felt for Eleanor. She had been away at a finishing school back east for 3 years, and Marcus had shown Tyler her letters and the occasional photograph. Each time, Tyler's heart had twisted in his chest, knowing she was too good for a simple ranch hand like himself. Eleanor came from a family with Spanish land grant heritage, even though they had lost most of their holdings over the years. The Riverside Ranch was what remained, but it was still substantial, covering nearly 10,000 acres of prime Montana grazing land. The coach came to a stop in front of the main house, its wheels kicking up a cloud of dust that made Tyler's eyes water. He wiped his face with his bandana and tried to look busy checking the cinch on his saddle, even though he had already checked it 3 times. His black gelding, Smoke, stamped impatiently, sensing his rider's nervous energy. Marcus strode past him toward the coach, his boots thudding against the packed earth. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the same dark hair and eyes as his sister. At 30 years old, he had the bearing of someone who had carried responsibility his whole life. "Tyler, come help with the bags," Marcus called over his shoulder. Tyler's heart hammered against his ribs as he tied Smoke to the hitching post and walked toward the coach. The driver was already climbing down, and Marcus had his hand on the door handle. When it opened, Tyler saw a small gloved hand emerge, then a flash of deep green fabric, and then Eleanor herself stepped down into the Montana sunshine. She was more beautiful than any photograph could capture. Her dark hair was pinned up beneath a fashionable hat, and her dress was clearly made by skilled hands back east. But it was her face that stopped Tyler's breath, the warm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, the generous mouth that curved into a smile when she saw her brother, the intelligence and spirit that radiated from her like heat from a summer stone. "Marcus," she exclaimed and threw her arms around her brother's neck. He laughed and spun her around once before setting her back on her feet. "Welcome home, Eleanor. We have missed you terribly." "I have missed this place every single day," she said, and Tyler heard the emotion in her voice. "The East is fine for learning, but Montana is home." Then her eyes found Tyler, and he felt pinned in place like a butterfly on a collector's board. She smiled at him, friendly and open, with no idea of the effect she had on him. "You must be one of Marcus's ranch hands." "Thank you for helping with my luggage." Marcus gestured toward Tyler. "This is Tyler Dawson. He has been with us for 5 years now, one of the best hands I have ever had. Tyler, my sister Eleanor." Tyler pulled off his hat and held it against his chest, acutely aware of the dust on his clothes and the sweat staining his shirt. "Madam, it is a pleasure to meet you properly. Welcome home." Something flickered in her eyes, a recognition perhaps, or maybe he was imagining it. "Have we met before?" "You seem familiar somehow." Marcus laughed. "You have seen him around the ranch when you were younger, I am sure. Tyler started working here when you were 15 before you left for school." Eleanor studied Tyler's face for a moment longer, then smiled again. Perhaps that is it. Well, thank you for your help, Mr. Dawson. Just Tyler, madam. She tilted her head slightly. Then you must call me Eleanor. I have never been one for excessive formality, much to my teacher's dismay back east. Marcus clapped Tyler on the shoulder. Help me get these trunks inside, and then we need to check on that fence line in the north pasture. The boys reported some damage yesterday. Tyler nodded and moved to the back of the coach, where the driver was untying Eleanor's luggage. There were 3 large trunks and 2 smaller cases. He hefted one of the trunks onto his shoulder, feeling the weight of books and belongings from a different world, and followed Marcus toward the house. The main house at Riverside Ranch was built of logs and stone, 2 stories tall with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. It had been expanded over the years as the Ortiz family's fortunes had grown, and now it stood as a testament to hard work and determination. Inside, the walls were decorated with paintings and photographs, hand-woven rugs covered the wooden floors, and everything spoke of a family that valued beauty alongside practicality. Tyler carried the trunk up to what he assumed was Eleanor's room, following Marcus's directions. It was a corner room on the 2nd floor with windows facing both east and south, giving views of the mountains and the river valley below. The furniture was simple but well made, and someone had put fresh wildflowers in a vase on the dresser. Eleanor appeared in the doorway as Tyler set down the 2nd trunk. She had removed her hat and traveling jacket, and in the afternoon light streaming through the windows, she looked like something out of a dream. "Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate your help." "It is no trouble, madam." "Eleanor," he corrected when she raised an eyebrow. "Tell me, how is the ranch? Marcus's letters always focus on the practical matters. I want to know how things really are." Tyler considered his words carefully. "It is good land. We run about 1,500 head of cattle now, and the horses are some of the finest in Montana. Your brother has built something solid here. The men respect him, and the work is hard but fair. And you enjoy the work. I cannot imagine doing anything else. This land gets into your blood." Eleanor moved to the window and looked out over the ranch. "I know exactly what you mean. I tried to appreciate the cities back east, the culture and the learning, but every night I dreamed of this sky, this air. They have nothing like Montana anywhere else in the world." Tyler found himself moving closer, drawn by the genuine feeling in her voice. "Then, why did you stay away so long?" She glanced at him, and for a moment he saw something vulnerable in her expression. "Because Marcus insisted I needed proper education, needed to become a lady. He wants me to make a good marriage, to have opportunities beyond this ranch." She paused, then added quietly, "But I think what I want might be different from what he wants for me." Before Tyler could respond, Marcus called from downstairs. "Tyler, we need to ride out before the day gets any hotter." Eleanor smiled, but the openness from a moment before had shuddered slightly. "You should go. I need to unpack anyway, and I am sure we will see plenty of each other. I plan to be very involved in the ranch now that I am home." Tyler nodded, put his hat back on, and headed for the door. As he reached the threshold, he turned back. "For what it is worth, Eleanor, I think you should do what makes you happy, not what anyone else thinks you should do." Her eyes widened slightly, and a real smile crossed her face. "That is surprisingly forward advice from someone I just met. I figure honesty is worth something, even from a ranch hand." He left before she could respond, but he carried the memory of her smile with him as he rode out with Marcus and 2 other hands to check the fence line. The northern pasture bordered a creek that ran down from the mountains, and some of the posts had been damaged, whether by cattle rubbing against them or something else. They needed to find out. The work was hot and dusty, and Tyler was grateful for it. Physical labor helped quiet his mind, helped him focus on something other than the impossible situation he found himself in. He had loved Eleanor from afar for 3 years, and now she was here, real and vibrant and more incredible than he had imagined. But she was still the owner's sister, still far above a man who worked with his hands for wages. Marcus rode up beside him as they finished replacing a damaged post. "You are quiet today, Tyler. Something on your mind?" Tyler hammered in the last nail before responding. "Just thinking about all the work we have ahead before winter." Marcus studied him for a moment, and Tyler had the uncomfortable feeling that his boss saw more than he wanted to reveal, but Marcus just nodded. "Eleanor's return has complicated things in some ways. I am glad to have her home, but I worry about her future. She needs to marry well, needs security beyond what this ranch can provide." "The ranch seems pretty secure to me," Tyler said carefully. "It is, but ranching is always uncertain. One bad winter, one cattle disease, and everything can fall apart. I want better for her. There is a man, Robert Chandler, who owns the bank in Helena. He is coming to visit in a few weeks. I think he would be a good match for Eleanor." Tyler felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Does Eleanor know about this?" "She knows Robert exists. Whether she knows I am hoping they will suit each other, I cannot say. Eleanor has always been headstrong. She will make up her own mind." That was exactly what Tyler was afraid of, or perhaps hoping for. He was not sure which. The days that followed developed into a pattern that was both wonderful and torturous for Tyler. Eleanor threw herself into ranch life with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone, except Marcus. She rode out with the hands to check on cattle, helped with the bookkeeping, and even insisted on learning how to rope and brand. She wore split riding skirts instead of traditional dresses, and seemed completely unconcerned with maintaining the ladylike image her Eastern education had supposedly instilled. Tyler found himself constantly in her presence, teaching her skills she wanted to learn, answering her questions about the cattle and the land. Every conversation made him love her more, and every moment made it clearer that loving her was hopeless. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after her return, Eleanor convinced Tyler to teach her how to rope a fence post. They were in the practice corral behind the barn, and the other hands had made themselves scarce, probably at Marcus's direction. "You are holding the rope too tight," Tyler said, moving closer to adjust her grip. The scent of her, something floral mixed with leather and horses, made his head swim. "You need to let it flow through your fingers, not strangle it." Eleanor laughed. "I am not strangling it, I am maintaining control. Sometimes control means letting go a little." She glanced up at him, and they were suddenly very close, her shoulder almost touching his chest. "Is that something you practice, Tyler, letting go?" His mouth went dry. "I try to when it is appropriate." "And when is it appropriate?" He should have stepped back, should have maintained the proper distance between a ranch hand and the owner's sister. Instead, he found himself saying, "I am not sure it ever is with some things." Eleanor held his gaze for a long moment, and Tyler saw awareness there, something that suggested she understood exactly what he was not saying. Then she turned back to the fence post, raised the rope, and made a perfect throw that settled the loop around the post's top. "How was that?" she asked, but her voice was slightly breathless. "Perfect," Tyler said, and he was not talking about the rope work. Before either of them could say anything else, Marcus appeared at the corral fence. His expression was neutral, but Tyler felt like he had been caught stealing. "Eleanor, you have a visitor. Robert Chandler has arrived early. He is waiting in the parlor." Eleanor's face showed surprise and something else, perhaps annoyance. Robert, but he was not supposed to come until next week. Apparently, his business in Butte concluded early. "Come inside and clean up, please." Eleanor handed the rope to Tyler, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Thank you for the lesson. Perhaps we can continue another time." "Whenever you like," Tyler said, knowing that there would not be another time not like this. He watched her walk toward the house with Marcus, and even from a distance, he could hear her brother talking to her in low, urgent tones. Tyler coiled the rope slowly, giving his hands something to do while his mind raced. Robert Chandler was everything Tyler was not. Wealthy, educated, connected to the power structures that ran Montana territory. He would be able to give Eleanor security, status, a life beyond the constant uncertainty of ranching. Tyler could offer her nothing except his heart and his labor, and that was not enough for a woman like her. That evening, Tyler ate dinner with the other ranch hands in the bunkhouse, listening to their rough jokes and stories, feeling like he was watching his life from a distance. Through the window, he could see lights in the main house, and he imagined Eleanor sitting at the dinner table with Robert Chandler, discussing books and culture and things Tyler knew nothing about. Jake Morrison, one of the older hands, noticed his distraction. "You are mooning over the boss's sister, ain't you?" Tyler started to deny it, then shrugged. "That obvious to anyone with eyes. But you are playing a losing game there, friend. Marcus has big plans for that girl, and they do not include a cowhand, no matter how good you are with cattle." "I know that. Knowing and accepting are different things. Take my advice. Find yourself a nice girl in town, someone who makes sense for a man like you. Don't torture yourself over something that cannot be." Tyler knew Jake was right, but knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally were two entirely different matters. He lay in his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, and made a decision. He would prove himself worthy of Eleanor. He did not know how yet, but he would find a way. He had saved most of his wages over the 5 years he had worked at Riverside Ranch. Maybe it was enough to start his own small spread. Maybe if he had land of his own, he could approach Marcus as something other than just a hired hand. The next morning, Tyler rode into Wallace to visit the land office. The town was small but growing, with a main street that boasted a general store, a saloon, a church, a bank, and various other businesses. The land office was run by a man named Chester Fields, who knew every acre within 100 miles and who owned what? "Tyler Dawson," Chester said when Tyler walked in. "What brings you here?" "Marcus looking to expand Riverside Ranch." "No, sir. This is personal business. I am looking to see what land might be available for purchase, something small, maybe a few hundred acres, suitable for running cattle." Chester's eyebrows rose. "You are looking to start your own place. That is ambitious. Let me see what I have." He pulled out several survey maps and spread them across his desk. "There is a parcel about 15 miles north of Riverside, 500 acres along the Bitterroot River. Good grazing land, plenty of water. The previous owner gave up after a hard winter 2 years ago. It has been sitting empty since." "What is the price?" Chester named a figure that made Tyler's heart sink. He had savings, but not nearly enough. He would need at least twice what he had saved to buy the land and stock it with enough cattle to make it viable. "I see," Tyler said slowly. "Are there any smaller parcels available?" "Nothing that would support a working ranch. You need a certain minimum size to make it economically feasible, especially with Montana winters." Tyler thanked Chester and left the land office feeling defeated. He stood on the wooden sidewalk, watching townspeople go about their business, and tried to figure out his next move. 500 acres was a small ranch by Montana standards, but it was still more than he could afford. Tyler Dawson, as I live and breathe. He turned to see a woman approaching, and it took him a moment to recognize Sally Henderson. They had known each other growing up, before Tyler's parents had died and he had gone to work at Riverside Ranch. Sally had been a pretty girl then, and she had grown into a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "Sally, it has been a long time. How are you? Surviving, same as everyone. I heard you are working for the Ortiz family. That must be steady work." "It is." "Are you still living with your aunt?" Sally's expression clouded slightly. "Aunt Margaret passed last winter. I am working at the general store now, helping Mrs. Patterson." "I am sorry about your aunt. She was a good woman." They talked for a few more minutes, and Sally made it clear that she would welcome Tyler's attention if he was interested. She was a nice woman, exactly the kind Jake Morrison had suggested he should pursue. But when Tyler rode back to the ranch that afternoon, his thoughts were not on Sally Henderson. They were on dark eyes and a smile that made his heart race. Robert Chandler stayed at Riverside Ranch for 3 days, and they were the longest 3 days of Tyler's life. He watched Eleanor ride out with Robert in a fancy buggy, watched them walk together in the evening, watched Robert present her with gifts from Helena. To her credit, Eleanor did not seem particularly enthusiastic about any of it, but she was polite and friendly, which somehow made it worse. On the evening before Robert was scheduled to leave, Marcus called a gathering in the barn to discuss plans for the fall cattle drive. All the hands were there, about 15 men in total, plus Marcus and Robert. Eleanor appeared as well, despite Marcus's clear preference that she return to the house. "The drive to the railhead in Billings is scheduled for late September," Marcus explained, pointing to a map he had spread across a workbench. "That gives us 6 weeks to prepare. We will be taking about 800 head, so we will need every man here, plus a few extra we will hire temporarily." "What about Indians?" one of the younger hands asked. "I heard the Crow have been causing trouble up north." Marcus shook his head. "The Crow have been peaceful. The troubles you heard about were with some displaced Sioux passing through, but we will be well armed regardless. Tyler, you will ride point with me." Tyler nodded, accepting the responsibility. Riding point meant leading the herd, making decisions about the route and pace. Robert Chandler spoke up, his voice carrying the confidence of someone used to being heard. "Marcus, I have a proposal. Rather than driving the cattle all the way to Billings, you could ship them by rail from Helena. It would be much faster, and I could arrange favorable rates through my connections." "Helena is west of here," Marcus said. "Billings is the natural market for Montana cattle." "Yes, but the Helena route would save you 2 weeks on the trail, which means less weight loss and less risk. I have contacts who would pay premium prices for prime Montana beef." Marcus considered this, clearly intrigued by the business proposition. Tyler understood the appeal. A long cattle drive was expensive and risky. But something about Robert's offer bothered him, though he could not put his finger on exactly what. Eleanor apparently felt the same way. "Robert, why are you so interested in helping with the cattle sale? Your business is banking, not livestock." Robert smiled at her, but Tyler detected a hint of condescension in his expression. "My dear Eleanor, banking is about relationships and opportunities. Helping your brother with a profitable cattle sale strengthens our relationship. And if things develop between us, as I hope they will, your family's business would become my business." The barn went very quiet. Marcus looked pleased, but Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "That is presumptuous, Robert. You and I barely know each other. I apologize if I spoke too freely. But surely you understand that my visit here has been about more than just business with your brother." Eleanor stood abruptly. "This is not the appropriate venue for this conversation. Excuse me." She left the barn quickly, and Tyler saw the distress in her posture. Without thinking, he followed her outside. She was walking toward the corral, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warm evening. "Eleanor, wait." She turned, and in the twilight he saw tears glistening in her eyes. He spoke to me like I am a piece of property, to be negotiated and transferred. Your brother would never force you into anything. No, but he will pressure me. He thinks Robert represents security, a good future. He does not understand that I want something different. Tyler moved closer, drawn by her distress. What do you want? Eleanor looked up at him, and something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. I want to feel something real. I want someone who sees me, not what I represent. I want. She trailed off, seeming to realize what she had been about to say. I see you, Tyler said quietly. I have seen you since the first moment you came home. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why do you think I have spent so much time learning ranch work? Why do you think I keep finding excuses to be wherever you are? Tyler's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. Eleanor, I am a ranch hand. I have nothing to offer you. You have yourself. That is not nothing. He wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to pull her into his arms and damn the consequences. But he could not. Not yet. Not until he had something real to offer her. I cannot court you properly, not as things stand, but I am working on changing that. Will you wait for me? Will you give me time to prove I am good enough for you? Eleanor reached out and took his hand, the first time they had touched deliberately, intimately. Tyler, you do not have to prove anything. You already are good enough, but I understand about pride, about wanting to stand on your own. So yes, I will wait, but do not take too long. They stood there in the gathering darkness, hands clasped, until they heard voices from the barn and had to step apart. Tyler watched Eleanor walk back to the house, and he felt something settle inside him, a determination that bordered on obsession. He would find a way to make this work. Robert Chandler left the next morning, and Tyler was not sorry to see him go. But the banker's parting words to Marcus troubled him. Think about my offer regarding the cattle, Marcus, and think about the other matter we discussed as well. I believe our families joining would be beneficial for everyone involved. After Robert's buggy disappeared down the road, Marcus gathered Tyler and two other senior hands, Jake Morrison and Miguel Santos, in his office. Robert has offered to loan me the money to expand the ranch substantially. He wants to buy a partnership interest, which would give us the capital to double our herd size. Miguel, a stocky man who had worked for Marcus's father, frowned. A partnership means he has a say in how things run. Is that what you want? I am not sure yet. The opportunity is tempting, but I would be giving up some control. Marcus looked at Tyler. You were quiet during the meeting last night. What did you think of Robert's proposal about shipping cattle through Helena? Tyler chose his words carefully. The logistics make sense, but I do not know the Helena buyers. The Billings market is established, and we know we can get fair prices there. A new market is a gamble. Robert says his connections guarantee premium prices. People say a lot of things. I would want to see documentation, contracts that specify prices before committing our herd to an unknown market. Marcus nodded slowly. That is good thinking. I will ask Robert for more details before making any decisions. Jake spoke up. Boss, I need to say something and you might not want to hear it, but Robert Chandler strikes me as a man who is too eager to get involved in your affairs. A banker offering to become a partner in a ranch. That does not sit right. They usually prefer to hold mortgages, not own the property. You think his interest is not legitimate. I think his interest might be more about Eleanor than about cattle. Marcus's expression hardened. My sister is not part of any business negotiation. Of course not, boss. I am just saying be careful. Men like Chandler often have complicated motives. After the meeting, Tyler threw himself into ranch work with renewed intensity. He was determined to save every penny he could, to find some way to earn the money he needed for that land. But on his wages, even working 12-hour days 7 days a week, it would take him years to accumulate enough. Eleanor continued to involve herself in ranch operations, and she and Tyler developed an unspoken understanding. They were never alone together, always careful to maintain propriety in public, but there was a connection between them that everyone noticed. Tyler caught Marcus watching them sometimes with an expression that was hard to read, concern mixed with something else. About a week after Robert's departure, a crisis developed that would change everything. One of the ranch hands, a young man named Billy Foster, came racing back to the ranch house in the middle of the afternoon, his horse lathered with sweat. "Wolves!" he shouted. "There is a pack attacking the north herd. They have already brought down 3 calves." Marcus immediately mobilized everyone. Wolves were a constant threat in Montana, but usually they avoided large herds. A pack bold enough to attack in daylight was dangerous and needed to be dealt with immediately. Tyler saddled Smoke and grabbed his rifle, joining the group of riders heading north. Eleanor appeared with her own horse, a bay mare named Willow, and Marcus tried to tell her to stay behind. "I can shoot as well as any man here," she said firmly, "and you need every gun you can get." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue but did not have time. "Stay close to Tyler then. If things get dangerous, you do what he says." They rode hard toward the north pasture, where the cattle were scattered and agitated. Tyler could hear the wolves before he saw them, their howls echoing across the grassland. Then he spotted them, a pack of at least 7, circling a group of cows that had formed a defensive cluster around their calves. "Spread out," Marcus ordered. "Drive them off, but be careful. They are desperate if they are hunting this boldly." The riders formed a loose line and advanced, firing shots into the air to startle the wolves. Most of the pack scattered at the sound of gunfire, but 3 large wolves, including the alpha male, held their ground. The alpha was huge, probably weighing close to 100 pounds, with gray fur and intelligent eyes that assessed the threat. Tyler aimed carefully and fired, sending a bullet into the ground near the alpha. The wolf jumped back but did not run. Instead, it turned its attention toward the riders, calculating, and then charged. "Look out!" Tyler shouted, but the wolf was not coming at him. It was going for Eleanor. She fired her rifle, but the shot went wide as her horse shied. The wolf was 20 feet away, then 10. Then Tyler spurred Smoke between Eleanor and the charging predator. He fired from the hip, a difficult shot from horseback, and the bullet caught the wolf in the shoulder, spinning it around. The animal yelped and limped away, and the rest of the pack finally broke and ran. Tyler's hands were shaking as he lowered his rifle. Eleanor's face was pale but composed. "Thank you," she said. "That was quick thinking." "Are you hurt?" "No, I am fine, just startled." Marcus rode up, his expression fierce. "Eleanor, you could have been killed." "But I was not, thanks to Tyler." Marcus looked at Tyler and something shifted in his eyes, an acknowledgement. "I owe you if anything had happened to her." "Nothing did," Tyler said. "She is safe." They spent the rest of the afternoon securing the herd and tracking the wounded wolf, which they found dead about a mile away. The other wolves had scattered, and Tyler doubted they would return to bother the cattle again, at least not soon. But the incident had shaken everyone. That evening, Marcus called Tyler to his office in the main house. Tyler went with some trepidation, unsure what this private meeting meant. "Sit down," Marcus said, gesturing to a chair. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to Tyler. "I am not blind, you know. I have seen how you look at my sister." Tyler's throat tightened. "Marcus, I would never do anything inappropriate. I respect you and this ranch too much." "I know you would not. That is part of why I have not said anything before now." Tyler, you are a good man, one of the best I have known. You work hard, you are honest, and today you risked your life for Eleanor without hesitation. Those things matter to me. But, Tyler could hear the word coming. But you are a ranch hand, and Eleanor is my sister. I have responsibilities to her, to our family name, to her future. Robert Chandler can give her security, position, a life without hardship. What can you offer her? Tyler set down his whiskey glass and met Marcus's eyes directly. Right now, not much, but I am working on changing that. I have been saving my wages for 5 years. I looked into buying land, starting my own place. I am not there yet, but I will be. That could take years. I know, but I am willing to work for it. I am willing to prove that I can provide for her, that I can be worthy of her. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor has a mind of her own. Even if I wanted to force her toward Robert, which I do not, she would resist. But I will not give you my blessing to court her until you have something solid to stand on. That is not negotiable. I understand. I am not asking for your blessing now. I am asking for time to earn it. How much time? Tyler thought about the land he had seen, the money he needed, the reality of his situation. 2 years. Give me 2 years. That is a long time to ask my sister to wait. She says she is willing. Are you willing to ask her to marry Robert in the meantime? Marcus actually smiled, a brief flash of humor. You have a point. And no, I would never force her into marriage with anyone. Very well, Tyler, you have 2 years. If by then you have your own land, your own ranch, something solid, we will revisit this conversation. Tyler stood and offered his hand. Marcus shook it firmly. Do not make me regret this. I will not, sir. I promise you that. Tyler left the office feeling both elated and terrified. 2 years seemed like forever and no time at all. He needed to find a way to accelerate his plans, to earn more money somehow. As he walked across the yard toward the bunkhouse, Eleanor appeared from the shadows near the barn. I heard, she said quietly. I was listening at the window. I know I should not have, but I needed to know what Marcus would say. 2 years is a long time. It will pass, and in the meantime I am not going anywhere. She moved closer, and in the darkness, Tyler allowed himself to take her hand again. Tyler, you do not have to do this alone. I have some money of my own, inheritance from our mother. It is not much, but it could help with land purchase. No, Tyler said firmly. I appreciate the offer more than you know, but I need to do this myself. I need to know that I earned it, that I can provide for you without relying on your family's money. That is foolish pride. Maybe, but it is important to me. Can you understand that? Eleanor sighed but nodded. I can. I just wish there was an easier way. So do I. But some things are worth working for. They stood together in the darkness for a few more moments, then separated before anyone could see them. Tyler went to the bunkhouse and lay in his bunk, mind racing with plans and possibilities. 2 years. He had to find a way. The opportunity came from an unexpected direction about 3 weeks later. Marcus received a letter from a rancher named George Hartford, who operated a spread about 50 miles north, near the Canadian border. Hartford was organizing a special cattle drive to supply beef to the mining camps in the northern Montana goldfields. The demand was enormous, and the prices being offered were triple what they could get at the railheads. The catch was that the drive would be dangerous, covering rough terrain through areas where rustlers operated, and it would take at least 6 weeks. Marcus called a meeting to discuss the opportunity. Hartford is looking for experienced men to help drive 500 head north. He is offering triple wages for the duration of the drive, plus a bonus if we deliver at least 90% of the herd safely. Jake whistled. Triple wages is serious money, but that route is no joke. I have heard stories about the rustlers operating up there. The risk is real. Marcus acknowledged. "That is why I am only asking for volunteers. I need to send at least 4 men to represent Riverside Ranch since we are contributing 100 head to the drive. But I will not order anyone to go." Tyler's mind was already calculating. 6 weeks at triple wages plus a bonus could earn him enough to make a significant dent in what he needed for land. "I will go," he said immediately. Marcus looked at him. "Are you sure? This is not like a normal cattle drive." "I am sure." Miguel volunteered as well, along with 2 younger hands who were eager for adventure and extra money. Marcus nodded. "All right. You leave in 1 week. Tyler, you will be in charge of our men. Check in with me before you go, and I will give you specific instructions." Eleanor was not happy when she heard about Tyler's decision. She found him in the stable that evening, checking his tack. "This is about the money, is not it? About buying that land?" "Partly. But it is also about proving myself, about showing I can handle difficult situations." "By risking your life. Tyler, men die on these dangerous drives. Rustlers do not just steal cattle, they kill anyone who gets in their way." He turned to face her fully. "I know the risks, but this is the fastest way to get the money I need. 2 years becomes 1 year, maybe less." "Is that not worth something?" Eleanor's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Not if you die in the process. What good is land and money if you are not here to share it with?" Tyler pulled her into the shadows of the stable, knowing he should not but unable to stop himself. He took her hands in his. "I will come back, I promise you that, but I have to do this. I have to prove that I am worthy of you, not just to your brother but to myself." "You stubborn man," she whispered, but there was affection in her voice. Then, before Tyler could react, she stood on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but it sent electricity through his entire body. "Come back to me," she said. "That is all I ask. Come back safely." Tyler wanted to kiss her again properly, wanted to wrap his arms around her and never let go. Instead, he squeezed her hands gently and stepped back. "I will. That is a promise." The week passed too quickly. Tyler spent his time preparing his gear, checking his weapons, and making sure his horse was in top condition. Marcus gave him $100 in cash to cover expenses and told him to be careful. The night before he was scheduled to leave, Tyler rode into Wallace to visit the land office one more time. Chester Fields was surprised to see him. "Back again. Did you come into money?" "Working on it. I am going on a special drive that will pay well. If I am successful, I should have enough for a down payment on that 500-acre parcel. Will it still be available in a couple of months?" Chester checked his records. "Likely. It has been sitting empty for over a year. But I cannot hold it without a deposit." Tyler counted out $50 from his savings, money he had brought with him just in case. "Will this hold it for 3 months?" Chester's eyebrows rose. "That is serious money. You are committed to this." "More than you know. Do we have a deal?" "We do. I will mark the property as pending and give you until November to come up with the rest. If you cannot make it by then, you will lose your deposit." "I will make it." Tyler rode back to the ranch feeling like he had just stepped off a cliff. He had committed most of his liquid savings as a deposit, which meant he absolutely had to succeed on this cattle drive. There was no margin for failure now. The next morning, he and the other 3 Riverside Ranch hands rode north to meet George Hartford and the rest of the drive crew. The gathering point was a ranch near Great Falls, and when they arrived, Tyler counted about 20 men and 500 head of cattle. Hartford was a grizzled man in his 50s, lean and tough as old leather. "You the men from Riverside Ranch?" Hartford asked, looking them over with a critical eye. "Yes, sir. I am Tyler Dawson. This is Miguel Santos, Billy Foster, and Jack Russell. Marcus Ortiz wrote that you are good with cattle. I hope that is true because this is going to be a hard drive." We are taking these beeves through some rough country to reach the mining camps. There are rustlers, difficult river crossings, and bad terrain. I need men who can handle problems without falling apart." "We can handle it," Tyler said with more confidence than he felt. The drive started the next morning. The plan was to move the herd north and slightly east, following river valleys where possible but crossing several mountain passes that would challenge both cattle and men. The first few days went smoothly enough, and Tyler began to relax slightly. The cattle were in good condition, and the crew worked well together despite being strangers. But on the fifth day, they encountered their first serious problem. A flash flood had washed out the ford they had planned to use to cross the Marias River. The water was running high and fast, too dangerous for cattle. Hartford called a meeting. "We need to find another crossing, but that means going 15 miles out of our way, which puts us behind schedule. Or we can wait here for 2 or 3 days for the water to go down." "What about the Box Canyon crossing?" one of the other hands suggested. "It is narrow but usually shallow." Hartford shook his head. "Too risky. Cattle could pile up and start a stampede." Tyler had been studying the map Hartford carried. "What if we go upstream about 5 miles? The river spreads out there, makes it shallower. It would mean crossing a wider stretch, but the current would not be as strong." Hartford considered this. "That could work. You have a good eye for terrain, Dawson. All right, we will try your route." They moved the herd upstream and found that Tyler's suggestion worked. The crossing was wide but manageable, and they got all the cattle across without losing a single animal. Hartford clapped Tyler on the shoulder afterward. "Good thinking. You have done this kind of work before." "Just paying attention to the land, sir." As they moved deeper into the northern territories, the terrain became more rugged. They were in country where few settlers had ventured, where the mountains loomed on all sides and the valleys were thick with pine forests. It was beautiful but dangerous, and Tyler found himself thinking constantly of Eleanor, using thoughts of her as a touchstone to keep him focused. 3 weeks into the drive, the rustlers made their move. It happened at night when the cattle were bedded down in a mountain meadow. Tyler was on watch along with 2 other men when he heard the first gunshot. Then all hell broke loose. Men on horseback came charging out of the darkness, firing guns and shouting to start a stampede. Tyler drew his revolver and fired back, more to raise an alarm than with any hope of hitting anything in the darkness. The cattle were already panicking, starting to run. "Stop the stampede," Hartford was shouting. "Get in front of them." Tyler spurred smoke toward the front of the running herd, a desperately dangerous move. If his horse stumbled, he would be trampled to death. But he managed to get ahead of the lead cattle and started firing his gun into the air while waving his hat. The sudden noise and movement confused the leaders, making them veer to one side. Other hands followed Tyler's example, and slowly they managed to turn the stampede into a mill, the cattle running in a circle rather than a straight line. Meanwhile, the rustlers had realized their easy theft was not going to happen. There was more gunfire, and Tyler saw one of the rustlers fall from his horse. Then the attackers were retreating back into the darkness, unwilling to risk a pitched battle against determined men. When dawn broke, they counted their losses. 2 cattle were missing, presumably stolen in the initial confusion. One of the hands had been shot in the leg, a painful but not life-threatening wound. And Tyler had a bullet graze across his upper arm that he had not even noticed until someone pointed out the blood. Hartford personally bandaged Tyler's arm. "You saved this drive last night. If the cattle had stampeded fully, we would have lost half of them to broken legs and scatter. That was brave work, getting in front of them like that. Just doing what needed to be done. Well, there will be an extra bonus for you when we get paid. I take care of men who come through when it counts." The rest of the drive was tense, but without further incidents. The rustlers apparently decided the herd was too well protected to be worth another attempt. They crossed into the Goldfield territory after 5 weeks, and Tyler got his first look at the mining camps. They were rough, dirty, chaotic places where thousands of men were tearing up the earth in search of gold. The demand for beef was insatiable, and Hartford negotiated a price that was even better than he had projected. When the sale was finalized and Hartford divided up the money, Tyler found himself holding more cash than he had ever seen at one time. "Your share, plus the bonus I promised," Hartford said, handing over a fat envelope. "You are a hell of a hand, Dawson. If you ever want work, you come find me." Tyler counted the money carefully. $240, plus the $50 he had already committed to the land deposit. It was not quite enough for the full purchase price of the land, but it was close, very close. If he could save aggressively for the next few months, he could make up the difference. The ride back to Riverside Ranch took another week, but Tyler barely noticed the time passing. His mind was already racing ahead, planning his next steps. He would talk to Chester Fields, finalize the land purchase, start planning how to stock it with cattle. Maybe he could buy a small initial herd, 10 or 15 head, and build from there. It would be tight, but it was possible. When he finally rode into Riverside Ranch on a cool October afternoon, Eleanor was the first person he saw. She was standing on the porch of the main house, and when she spotted him, her face lit up with such joy that Tyler felt his heart might burst. He dismounted and walked toward her, aware that people were watching but no longer caring. "You came back," she said, her voice trembling. "I promised I would." She reached out and touched his arm, right where the bullet graze was healing beneath his shirt. "You are hurt." "It is nothing, barely a scratch." "Tyler Dawson, you scared me half to death. When Miguel sent that telegram about the rustler attack, I could not sleep for days." He had not known Miguel had sent a telegram. He made a mental note to thank his friend. "I am fine, Eleanor, better than fine." "I made the money I needed." Her eyes widened. "You did, truly. Almost all of it. By the end of the year, I will have enough to buy that land I told you about. 500 acres on the Bitterroot River. It is not much, but it is a start." Eleanor glanced around to make sure no one was close enough to hear, then said quietly, "Take me to see it. I want to see where we might build our future." The casual assumption that they would share that future made Tyler's chest tight with emotion. "Tomorrow." "I will take you tomorrow if Marcus gives permission." Marcus did give permission, though with clear instructions that they were to take Miguel along as a chaperone. Tyler did not mind. He trusted Miguel completely, and besides, he was too excited about showing Eleanor the land to care about proprieties. They rode out early the next morning, 3 riders heading north under a crystalline October sky. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, and the mountains were already showing their first dustings of snow. Tyler led them to the property Chester Fields had shown him on the maps, and when they crested the final ridge and looked down into the valley, Eleanor gasped. The land spread out below them, 500 acres of grassland along the Bitterroot River, with stands of cottonwoods and willows marking the water's course. The mountains rose on either side, protective and majestic. There was a small cabin on the property, abandoned but still standing, and several outbuildings in various states of disrepair. "It is beautiful," Eleanor breathed. "Tyler, this is perfect." Miguel rode down to inspect the cabin while Tyler and Eleanor sat on their horses, looking over the land. Tyler pointed out features, talking about where he would rebuild fences, where the best grazing was, where he might dig a well for a proper house someday. "I am getting ahead of myself," he said finally. I do not even own it yet, not officially. But you will. And then what? Then I come to your brother with a concrete offer. I have land, I have the start of a herd, I have the foundation of something solid. I ask for permission to court you properly. Eleanor turned to look at him, her eyes serious. And if he says no, then I will work harder, prove myself more. But he gave me 2 years, and I am going to make it in less than 1. He will see that I am serious, that I can provide for you. I never doubted that, Eleanor said softly. Not for a single moment. They rode down to the cabin where Miguel was examining the structure. Solid bones, he reported. The roof needs work, but the walls are sound. With some labor, you could make this livable. Tyler could already see it in his mind. The cabin repaired and expanded, a barn built, cattle grazing in the meadows, smoke rising from the chimney. And Eleanor beside him, making this empty land into a home. The next 2 months passed in a blur of activity. Tyler finalized the land purchase with Chester Fields, signing papers that made him, for the first time in his life, a landowner. He spent every spare moment at his new property, working on the cabin, repairing fences, clearing brush. Marcus allowed him to take time away from Riverside Ranch, understanding what Tyler was building. In December, Tyler used most of his remaining money to buy 10 head of cattle from a seller in Great Falls, quality stock that would form the nucleus of his herd. It was not much, but it was a start. He also bought 2 chickens and started a small vegetable garden near the cabin, thinking ahead to spring planting. Eleanor visited whenever she could, always with a chaperone, and she threw herself into helping with the work. She painted the interior of the cabin, hung curtains she sewed herself, and brought dishes and furniture from Wallace. Slowly, the abandoned property began to look like a home. On Christmas Eve, Tyler rode to Riverside Ranch wearing his best clothes, his hair slicked back, his boots polished. He carried a small box in his pocket, something he had ordered from a jeweler in Helena weeks ago. When he arrived, Marcus invited him into the office. "You wanted to talk to me?" Marcus asked, though his expression suggested he already knew what was coming. Tyler took a deep breath. "Sir, I know it has not been 2 years, but I think I have fulfilled the spirit of our agreement. I own 500 acres of good grazing land. I have 10 head of quality cattle with more to come. I have a cabin that is livable and the foundation for a working ranch. I am asking for your permission to court Eleanor properly, with the intention of asking her to marry me." Marcus studied him for a long moment. "You have exceeded my expectations, Tyler. When I gave you 2 years, I honestly did not think you would make it. I thought reality would set in, that you would realize how difficult it would be, but you proved me wrong. Does that mean?" "It means I am giving you my blessing. Eleanor is her own woman and will make her own choice, but you have my approval to court her. Just do not make me regret this." Tyler felt like he could barely breathe. "Thank you, sir. I will not. I promise you that." He found Eleanor in the parlor, decorating a Christmas tree with her sister-in-law, Maria, whom Marcus had married the previous year. When Eleanor saw Tyler's expression, she stopped what she was doing. "Tyler, what is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. Can I talk to you outside?" They walked out onto the porch, and the cold December air made their breath visible. Tyler took Eleanor's hands, feeling them tremble slightly, whether from cold or emotion he could not tell. "I talked to your brother. He has given his permission for me to court you." Eleanor's face broke into a radiant smile. "He has, truly, truly. But Eleanor, I do not want to wait for a long courtship. I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but I have loved you since before you went away to school, and I have spent every day since you came back falling more in love with you. I want to make this official." He pulled out the small box and opened it. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing fancy but honest and real. "Eleanor Ortiz, will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down her face, but she was laughing at the same time. "Yes. Yes, Tyler, of course I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and then, finally, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her properly. It was not their first kiss, but it was their first real one, without fear or secrecy. She melted against him, and Tyler thought his heart might explode with happiness. When they broke apart, Eleanor was looking up at him with such love in her eyes that Tyler felt humbled. "I cannot believe this is real," she whispered. "I cannot believe you are really mine." "I have been yours since the moment I saw you," Tyler said. "The rest was just catching up to where my heart already was." They went back inside to share the news, and the household erupted in celebration. Marcus embraced Tyler, Maria kissed Eleanor's cheeks, and even the ranch hands who had been invited in for Christmas Eve dinner cheered and whistled. Wine was poured, toasts were made, and Tyler stood with his arm around Eleanor, thinking that he had never been happier in his life. They were married in the spring, on a perfect April day when the meadows were full of wildflowers and the mountains were still capped with snow. The wedding took place at the small church in Wallace, with what seemed like half the territory in attendance. Tyler wore a new suit that Eleanor had helped him pick out, and she wore a dress of ivory lace that made her look like something out of a dream. Jake Morrison stood as Tyler's best man, and Eleanor's friend from school, Catherine Wells, came all the way from Boston to serve as maid of honor. Marcus walked Eleanor down the aisle, and Tyler saw the emotion on his brother-in-law's face as he placed Eleanor's hand in Tyler's. "Take care of her," Marcus said quietly. "With my life," Tyler promised. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Tyler's voice shook slightly when he said his vows, and Eleanor's eyes were bright with tears. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Tyler kissed her with such tenderness that someone in the congregation actually sighed audibly. The reception was held at Riverside Ranch, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the night. Tyler danced with his new wife under the stars, holding her close, and marveled at how his life had changed. A year ago, he had been just a ranch hand with an impossible dream. Now he was a landowner, a husband, and the happiest man in Montana. As the evening wound down, Tyler and Eleanor slipped away to head to their own place, the cabin on the Bitterroot River that was now truly their home. Miguel and some of the other hands had decorated it while they were at the wedding, hanging more flowers and leaving gifts. A fire was burning in the fireplace, and someone had left food and wine on the table. "Welcome home, Mrs. Dawson," Tyler said as he carried Eleanor across the threshold. She laughed, her arms around his neck. "I love the sound of that, Mrs. Dawson, Eleanor Dawson." He set her down gently and looked around the cabin, seeing it with fresh eyes. It was small, simple, nothing like the grand house Eleanor had grown up in. "It is not much," he started to say, but she put her fingers against his lips. "It is everything. It is ours. We built this together, Tyler. That makes it perfect." They spent their wedding night in that small cabin, and Tyler discovered that being married to Eleanor was even more wonderful than he had imagined. She was passionate and loving, strong and tender, and she gave herself to him completely. In return, he vowed silently to spend the rest of his life making her happy. The first year of their marriage was hard work, but deeply satisfying. Tyler expanded the herd to 30 head of cattle, using money from selling calves and careful trading. Eleanor proved to be a natural rancher, helping with everything from branding to bookkeeping. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, building their ranch into something sustainable. Marcus was generous with advice and help, loaning them equipment when needed and sending hands to help with major projects. But Tyler made sure to pay back every favor, maintaining his independence while accepting the support of family. It was a delicate balance, but one he managed successfully. In the fall of their first year of marriage, Eleanor told Tyler she was pregnant. He was so overwhelmed with emotion that he actually cried, something he had not done since his parents had died. They stood in the kitchen of their cabin, her hand on his chest, his arms around her, and planned for their future. "We will need to expand the house," Eleanor said practically. "One room is not enough for a baby. I will start building an addition this week. 2 more rooms, maybe 3 eventually. 3 is ambitious. I am planning ahead. I want a large family with you, Eleanor, as many children as God blesses us with." She smiled against his shoulder. "Then we definitely need more rooms." Their son was born in May, during the season when the calves were being born and the meadows were lush with new grass. It seemed fitting somehow, new life arriving with spring. Eleanor labored for 12 hours, attended by Maria and a midwife from Wallace, while Tyler paced outside and prayed more fervently than he ever had in his life. When the midwife finally called him in, he found Eleanor exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. "Meet your son," she said. Tyler approached slowly, almost afraid to touch something so tiny and perfect. The baby had a shock of dark hair in Eleanor's eyes. "He is beautiful. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but had not been able to agree. Now, looking at his son, Tyler knew exactly what felt right. "What about James, after your father?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "James Thomas Dawson. It is perfect." Tyler held his son for the first time, feeling the weight of responsibility and love settle over him. This tiny person depended on him completely. Tyler vowed silently to be the best father he could, to provide for James, to teach him about the land, to raise him with love and discipline. The years that followed were marked by growth and change. The ranch prospered as Tyler proved himself to be a skilled cattleman and businessman. He increased the herd to over 100 head, bought an additional 200 acres adjacent to his original property, and built a proper house to replace the cabin. It was not a mansion, but it was solid and comfortable, with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a parlor with windows that looked out over the valley. Eleanor gave birth to 2 more children, a daughter they named Sarah in 1885 and another son, William, in 1887. The house was full of noise and life, and Tyler could not imagine being happier. He would come in from working the cattle to find his children playing on the floor, Eleanor cooking dinner, and feel such profound gratitude that it sometimes overwhelmed him. His relationship with Marcus remained strong. They were partners now in some ventures, trading cattle, sharing equipment, helping each other through difficult seasons. Robert Chandler had tried once more to buy into the Ortiz Ranch, but Marcus had firmly refused, satisfied with his family arrangements as they stood. Tyler heard through town gossip that Robert had eventually married a woman from Helena, a match based more on business connections than love. Tyler felt no satisfaction in this, only relief that Eleanor had escaped that fate. By 1890, Tyler's ranch was one of the most respected small operations in the territory. He had achieved everything he had set out to prove, that he was good enough, that he could provide, that he deserved Eleanor's love. But more importantly, he had learned that worthiness was not about wealth or status. It was about character, commitment, and the willingness to work for what mattered. One evening in late summer, Tyler sat on the porch of his house, watching the sun set over the mountains. Eleanor came out and sat beside him, her hand finding his automatically. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how far we have come. 10 years ago, I was just a ranch hand with an impossible dream. Now look at us. It was never impossible, I always believed in you. I know you did. That made all the difference." Their children were playing in the yard, James teaching his younger siblings how to rope a fence post. Tyler watched them with a sense of deep contentment. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked Eleanor. "Do you ever wish you had married someone like Robert Chandler, someone who could have given you an easier life?" Eleanor turned to look at him with such fierce love in her eyes that Tyler felt it like a physical force. "Never, not for a single moment. You gave me everything that matters. Love, partnership, a home we built together, beautiful children. What more could anyone want? I just want to make sure you are happy." "Tyler, I have been happy every day since I married you. Well, except maybe the days I was in labor," she added with a wry smile. "Those were challenging." He laughed and pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I love you, Eleanor. More every day, if that is even possible." "It is possible. I know, because that is how I feel about you." They sat together as the light faded, surrounded by the life they had built. Tyler thought about the young man he had been, standing in the dust watching a stagecoach arrive, thinking he could never be good enough for the woman inside. He had been wrong, not because he had proven his worth through land and cattle, but because worthiness was not something to be proven. It was something to be lived every day through love and work and commitment. The years continued to pass, bringing both challenges and joys. There were hard winters that tested them, years when cattle prices dropped and money was tight, times when disease threatened the herd. But Tyler and Eleanor faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and from the family they had created. In 1895, when Tyler was 40 years old, Marcus offered to sell him another 500 acres that bordered his property. "I am getting older," Marcus explained. "Maria and I have 3 children now, and I am thinking about what I will leave them. I want to simplify my holdings, focus on the core ranch, and I would rather sell this land to you than to a stranger." Tyler accepted the offer, not with money he did not have, but with a long-term arrangement that was more like family helping family than a business transaction. The additional land allowed him to run a much larger operation, and he hired 3 full-time hands to help with the work. His own children were growing up. James was 13 now, tall and serious, passionate about ranching. Sarah was 10, smart as a whip and already helping her mother with the complex bookkeeping the ranch required. William was 8, adventurous and always getting into some kind of harmless trouble. Tyler made sure to spend time with each of them, teaching them not just about cattle and horses, but about integrity, hard work, and the importance of family. He wanted them to understand that success meant more than accumulating wealth. It meant building something lasting, something that would endure beyond a single generation. One evening, James asked him, "Papa, how did you and Mama meet? I mean really meet, not just when she came back from school." Tyler thought about how to answer. "I saw her painting when she was young before she went east, but I was just a ranch hand then and she was the owner's sister. I had to work hard to prove I could give her a good life. Did Uncle Marcus not want you to marry her? He wanted her to have security, a life without hardship. I could not blame him for that, so I worked to build something of my own to show him I was serious." Sarah, who had been listening, piped up, "That is romantic, Papa." Eleanor, who was sitting nearby with her mending, smiled. "It was romantic. Your father fought for me, not with guns or violence, but with determination and hard work. That meant more than any grand gesture could have. Do you still love each other as much as you did then?" William asked with the directness of childhood. Tyler met Eleanor's eyes across the room. "More. Every year I love your mother more than the year before." "That is sappy," James said, but he was smiling. "You will understand someday, son. When you meet someone who makes your heart feel too big for your chest, you will understand." As the children grew into young adults, Tyler and Eleanor discussed their future. The ranch was successful enough now that they did not have to work quite as hard. They could afford to hire more help, to take time for themselves occasionally. "I would like to travel," Eleanor said one winter evening. "Not far, not for long, but I would like to see San Francisco, maybe visit Catherine in Boston. Show you some of the places I knew when I was younger. Then we will go. This spring, after calving season, we will take a trip. James is old enough to manage things here with help from Marcus." They did travel, taking a trip by train to San Francisco that was both exciting and exhausting. Tyler, who had spent his entire adult life in Montana, found the city overwhelming. But he loved seeing Eleanor's excitement, loved experiencing new things with her. "I prefer Montana," he told her as they stood on the wharf watching ships in the bay. "So do I," Eleanor agreed. "But it is good to see the world occasionally, to remember how big and varied it is." They returned home with gifts for the children and stories to share. But Tyler was profoundly grateful to see his land again, to ride through his pastures and check on his cattle. This was where he belonged, where his heart was rooted. In 1900, as the new century began, Tyler threw a celebration for the entire community. He had been ranching for 20 years, married for 15, and he wanted to mark the milestone. The party was held at his ranch with food, music, and dancing. People came from all over the county, and the celebration lasted 2 days. Marcus gave a speech, embarrassing Tyler by talking about how proud he was of his brother-in-law. "20 years ago, Tyler came to me asking for permission to court my sister. I made him prove himself, made him work for 2 years. He did it in less than 1. Since then, he has become not just a successful rancher but a pillar of this community, a devoted husband and father and my closest friend. Eleanor could not have chosen better." Eleanor also spoke, though she kept it brief. "When I came home from school, I thought I knew what I wanted from life, but Tyler showed me something better than what I had imagined. He showed me that love and partnership, that building something together, is worth more than any amount of wealth or status. I am grateful every day that he had the courage to fight for us." Tyler was too moved to speak at length. He simply thanked everyone for coming, thanked Marcus for believing in him eventually, and thanked Eleanor for being his partner in everything. As the party wound down and people began to leave, Tyler stood with Eleanor watching the sunset. Their children were nearby, James now 21 and courting a girl from town, Sarah helping to clean up, William playing with some of the younger children. "We did well," Eleanor said quietly. "We did," Tyler agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. Do you remember that day when I came home, when you helped with my luggage and I did not even know who you were? I remember every detail. You were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I thought you looked familiar even then. Somewhere in my memory I knew you, even though we had barely met. Like my heart recognized you before my mind did." Tyler turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. At 45, she was even more beautiful to him than she had been at 21. Time had added character to her face, laugh lines around her eyes, silver threads in her dark hair, but her spirit was the same, still vibrant, still strong. "I love you, Eleanor Dawson. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Tyler. You proved you were good enough for me, though you never needed to. You always were." They stood together as the sun sank below the mountains, surrounded by the life they had built, the family they had raised, the love they had nurtured for over 20 years. Tyler thought about the young man he had been, desperate to prove his worth, willing to work years to earn the right to love Eleanor. He had learned that love was not something to be earned, but something to be shared, grown, and protected. The years that followed brought the inevitable changes of time. Marcus passed away peacefully in 1905, and Tyler felt the loss deeply. Maria and her children inherited the Riverside Ranch, but the two families remained close, helping each other, celebrating together, and supporting one another through difficulties. James married his sweetheart, Amy, and they built a house on a corner of Tyler's land, starting their own family. Sarah shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to attend university in Helena, studying mathematics of all things. Tyler and Eleanor supported her decision, proud of her intelligence and ambition. William proved to have a gift with horses and started a breeding program that produced some of the finest stock in Montana. Eleanor's health began to decline in their later years. It was nothing dramatic, just the slow diminishment that comes with age. But Tyler watched her carefully, attentive to every need, every discomfort. When she could no longer ride out to check the cattle, he brought the ranch to her, conducting business from their house, making sure she was involved in every decision. "You do not have to do this," she told him one afternoon as he showed her the books. "You can manage without my input." "I do not want to manage without your input. We have been partners in everything for over 40 years. Why would I change that now?" She took his hand, her fingers thinner now but still warm. "Have I told you recently that you are a good man, Tyler Dawson? You tell me every day in 1,000 ways." They sat together in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from decades of companionship. Through the window, Tyler could see his grandchildren playing in the yard, James's 3 sons and Sarah's daughter, who visited during school breaks. Another generation growing up on this land, learning its rhythms, understanding its importance. "We did well," Eleanor said, echoing words from years before. "We built something that will last. We did more than that. We built a love that will last. Our children know what a good marriage looks like because they saw ours. That is a legacy worth more than all the cattle in Montana." Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1918, with Tyler holding her hand. She was 60 years old, and they had been married for 33 years. Tyler felt like half of himself had been torn away. The grief was overwhelming, a physical pain that made it hard to breathe. But he was not alone. His children surrounded him, his grandchildren filled his house with noise and life, and his friends from the community came to pay their respects. The funeral was held in Wallace, and it seemed like the entire town turned out to honor Eleanor Dawson, who had been loved by everyone who knew her. Marcus's son, also named Marcus, gave a eulogy that made Tyler cry. "My aunt was one of the strongest women I have ever known. She took an education meant to turn her into a society lady, and instead used it to help build a successful ranch. She raised 3 incredible children while working alongside her husband every day. And she loved deeply, completely, showing all of us what true partnership looks like in marriage. We will miss her terribly, but her legacy lives on in her family and in this community." After the funeral, Tyler returned to his ranch feeling empty. For the first time in decades, the house was quiet. James and his family had their own place. Sarah was teaching at the university in Helena, and William had recently married and moved to his own cabin on the property. Tyler wandered through rooms that echoed with memories. Here was where Eleanor had taught the children to read. There was the chair where she sat in the evenings, mending clothes or working on bookkeeping. Everywhere he looked, he saw her, felt her absence like a missing limb. He went to bed that night expecting to lie awake, but instead he dreamed. In his dream, Eleanor was young again, standing in front of the stagecoach in her green traveling dress, smiling at him. She reached out her hand, and when he took it, Tyler felt whole again. He woke with tears on his cheeks, but also with a sense of peace. Eleanor was gone, but what they had built together remained. Their love had created ripples that would extend forward through generations. Every child who learned that love meant partnership, every grandchild who understood that worthiness came from character rather than wealth, every person who witnessed what they had built together carried forward their legacy. Tyler lived another 7 years, and though he missed Eleanor every single day, he found purpose in being there for his family. He taught his grandsons to work cattle, told his granddaughters stories about their grandmother, and presided over a growing family with love and wisdom earned through decades of living. On a warm afternoon, in June 1925, Tyler sat on his porch watching his great-grandchildren play in the yard. He was 70 years old now, his hands gnarled with arthritis, his body worn from decades of hard physical labor. But his mind was clear and his heart was full. James came and sat beside him. "How are you feeling, Papa?" "Content, son. Very content. You are thinking about Mama." "I am always thinking about your mother. 40 years together was not enough, but I am grateful for every moment we had. You two set an example that I have tried to follow in my own marriage. Thank you for that." Tyler looked at his oldest son, seeing the man he had become, the father and rancher and community leader. "You have done well, James. You and Amy have built something solid, just like your mother and I did. With your help, you have always been there when we needed you. That is what family does." They sat together in comfortable silence until Sarah arrived with her husband and daughter. Then William showed up with his growing brood, and suddenly the porch was full of people, 3 generations of Dawsons gathered together. They ate dinner at the long table Tyler had built years ago, everyone talking over each other, laughing, sharing stories. As the evening wore on and people began to drift away to their own homes, Tyler felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what he and Eleanor had built, not just a ranch or a house, but a family bound together by love and shared values. This was the true measure of a life well lived. That night, Tyler went to bed feeling more tired than usual but peaceful. He thought about Eleanor, about the first moment he had seen her, about asking her to marry him, about all the years they had shared. He thought about proving he was good enough for her, and realized that the act of loving her, of being loved by her, had made him better than he ever could have been alone. Tyler Dawson passed away peacefully in his sleep that night, and when his family found him the next morning, there was a smile on his face. They buried him next to Eleanor in the cemetery overlooking the valley, 2 headstones side by side, marking the resting place of a love that had transcended all obstacles. The ranch continued, passed down through the family, growing and changing with each generation but always remaining the Dawson place, always carrying forward the legacy of Tyler and Eleanor. Stories about them became family legend, told to children and grandchildren, teaching lessons about love, perseverance, and the courage it takes to fight for what matters. In the end, Tyler had proven he was good enough, not through wealth or status, but through a lifetime of devotion, hard work, and unwavering love. He had taken an impossible dream and made it real, not just for himself but for everyone who came after him. His love for Eleanor had been the foundation on which he built everything else, and that love endured, written into the land itself, carried forward in the hearts of his descendants, a testament to the power of one ranch hand who dared to love beyond his station and proved that worth is measured not in dollars or acres, but in the depth and quality of the love we give and receive.